Welcome, everyone, to the Improvly Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Dana Gowan. So excited that you're here today. I say this every time, but it is true for today as well. You are in for a real treat because today we are talking all about senior improv. Improv is for grandparents too, and I can't wait to jump into it with our guest. But first, let me give you the rundown of this podcast, some of the goals that we have for today. One, to help people understand the benefits of improvisation and applied improvisation. Two, to demonstrate how improv shows up in all aspects of our lives. And three, to inspire you to try new things, get out of your heads and judgment zones, and find creative passions and outlets that can help you and serve you. And I've found and discovered an extra goal here is that I get the luxury of talking to really inspiring and interesting people. And no doubt that our guest today is absolutely inspiring and interesting as she is bringing improv to the senior community. So let me tell you all about our guest today, Paula Dirkes. Paula is an improvisational theater fan, actor, and facilitator based in Metro Detroit, Michigan. She has spent over 20 years in the improv theater community as a performer and improv games leader. She is the owner and chief play officer, love that title, of Vintage Improvisation Detroit, which brings her love of improv games and older adults together through her unique brand of in-person life enrichment programming in senior facilities in Metro Detroit. Paula has her master's degree in adult instruction and human performance improvement and has 20 years experience working with older adults. She spent 25 years in the health education and corporate wellness space, which we have in common there, and also 15 years as an entrepreneur. In 2021, she created Paula's Senior Improv Games training, which is designed specifically for improvisation actors, improv game leaders, improvisers, and activity leaders who want to earn an income and bring joy to the older adult population. Paula loves older adults, and I got this from her website bio. It says she happens to qualify as an older adult herself. Please welcome the positively passionate and patient Paula Dirkes. Yay, Paula, I'm so glad you're here.
Yay! Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're on. And I got to tell you, Paula, timing is everything because I was telling a friend a few months ago that my friend has a podcast. We chat on like our podcast goals. And I mentioned to her that I wanted to have someone on that does senior improv. And I didn't really know who to talk to, who to find. And then lo and behold, a few days later, one of your posts pops up on LinkedIn because we're connected. Probably we have shared connections. I see a post about senior improv and I'm like, boom, Paula would be a great person to interview. And I reached out to you and I'm just so grateful that you said yes. And yes, and.
Well, I appreciate that. I guess my work on LinkedIn and other social media must be working.
Right? I know sometimes it can feel
Yeah.
like you're just posting into a black void and you get some hits here and there, but that was kind of a lesson learned for me too, is like, just keep posting because you never know who's going to see it or need it at the right time. Timing is everything. So yeah, keep posting and sharing. It's important.
I will.
Well, and Paula, your website says that in 2021, while attending Camp Improv Utopia East, you learned that other improvisers had an interest in doing what you do with the senior community, but they felt ill-equipped to work with older adults. So you offered your first virtual workshop, which was the 8 Secrets to Elder-Friendly Improv Games, which I want to get to. We will definitely talk about that. But first, we need to talk about our Camp Improv Utopia connection. I have not been to East Camp, but I've been to Yosemite and Camp West, and I just love Camp Improv Utopia.
Yeah. I want to say I learned about it just by Google research. It was just before the pandemic, actually. So I've been to it 4 times and plan to go this next year, assuming I get in. And haven't been to the West or the Yosemite camps yet. But yeah, it's my favorite thing to do on Labor Day weekend with all kinds of people that I keep in touch with all year long. So it's wonderful.
I think I've been 4 times now as well, yeah, and East is definitely
Okay.
on my list, I don't think I can swing well, this is a limitation, but doing East and Yosemite because 'cause they're both in the same month in September,
Yeah.
that's a lot to do, I know Michael and Alex and a few people do it, and kudos to them, but, 1 year I might just have to do East instead of Yosemite, but it's on the list.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've had Nick Armstrong on as a guest. We've talked all about Camp
Yeah.
Improv Utopia. I love what they're all about. And I should add that Spain is on the list too, but Spain is definitely a commitment.
Well, if you haven't registered yet, you might not get in. I think they
Not for
just
this
announced the
year.
registration.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw that
yeah.
they did the lottery, but I hope that they keep offering international because that is my goal to do international improv. Have you done any international improv yet?
Not technically, not in Europe anyway. We did a virtual competition with a Canadian improv group during the
Ooh,
pandemic.
that counts.
Yeah,
That definitely
that was
counts.
fun.
That's cool. Yeah, that's on my list is to expand the improv horizons because I know there's a whole different world of like international improv and branching the gap of different cultures and what people find funny in different cultures. It's a whole thing. So, anyway, I say all that to say is I plan to go to Spain at some point for improv camp.
Well, and you should definitely check out the Applied Improv Conference. I went to the one in Vancouver last July and it was awesome.
Are
Yeah.
you planning to go to Prague this year?
Can't say I am. I would love
Commitments.
to do them all.
Yes, and
But
let's do it. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, it's oh, of course you're gonna go. I'm like, I gotta think about that one. But other
That's
yeah,
on my
but
list too.
it's just yeah. Well, Vancouver was, I've been to Canada certainly several times, but Vancouver was like being in Europe, only you're in Canada. So I just thought that was a really cool city.
Oh, what a great experience.
Yeah, I highly recommend going to Vancouver, if not for a conference. So
Oh my gosh. Paula, you have a wealth of experience. You've been doing improv for 20 years now. You're an improv legend, an improv fan. I mean, you've just got such a great bio of improv. So, can you tell us from the beginning, how did you get started in improv and comedy?
well, thanks for that legend title. I've never gotten that before.
I consider if you've been doing improv for 20 years, like you're a legend if at this point. That's
Well,
amazing.
let's say it's a span of over 20 years. I attended a American Society for Training and Development networking meeting back in, I'll say, the early 2000s. But no, actually, it would have been the 90s. And it was held at the second city of the Motor City at that time when it was down, right
Oh.
down. And the touring company, I think, hosted the meeting for us at that location. And they did some games and that was fun. And afterwards they said, and by the way, we've got a training center here if you'd like to sign up for classes. Well, I had actually been considering improv classes at a closer theater to where I live. And I thought, well, Second City, local theater, I will choose Second City. So I spent the next 3 years in classes. I went through all the training center. I auditioned for the conservatory, got into that. And then I finished up in about 2001. And typically, if you wanted to continue improv at that time, you needed a connection to a theater in order to try out for their home teams and things like that. And I didn't have one. And actually, about 15 years went by. And then about 7 years ago, I thought meetup.com must have improv. And of course they did. And I got attached to one in about 45 minutes from here. And then some of us from there didn't like traveling that far. So we formed Metro Detroit Improv. And I've been connected to that meetup group. And we do a meetup group every 2 weeks. And then we also perform. And so it's been a great a part of my life. And I get to hang out with young improvisers typically, which that's a whole nother chapter. I learned when I took improv back in Second City. At that time, I was in my early 40s, and I was an anomaly for sure. And that's continued, but the age of an improviser has gradually been rising over the years just because of whose line is it anyway, and
Mhm.
more theaters opening up, more classes being offered. It's just become a little bit more normal, but it's still somewhat of an anomaly to have 40, 50, 60 plus improvisers. So that's my short history.
Are you still performing with that meetup group?
Yeah, we actually just did a corporate show about 3 weeks ago for Pella Windows. We perform improv games, just like Whose Line Is It Anyway? But with entertainment, we incorporate them into the games, and they always love it. We've done fundraisers for nonprofit organizations. We do maybe 3, 4 shows a year because everybody's normally working full time. And they also are in other shows and things. And so it's a nice opportunity when it becomes available.
I love that, and I love that you were involved in the improv scene in the '90s because that's the I know improv was around before that, but, like, the '90s was really when it was getting its start and growing, and you were around to see that in the Second City community. That's cool, and you've gotten to
Yeah.
see it grow and see more diversity and more ages now participating in it.
Yeah. And at the time I was at Second City, the main stage actors you'll see in movies and different things today. Keegan Michael Key was on the main
Yeah.
stage when I was there. And a guy named Antoine McKay, who has his own theater in Chicago, but he's been on, I try to remember the name of the show. Anyway, there's been some real talent that's come out of that group of actors over the time that it was in Detroit. And I got to have them as instructors. So that was lovely.
That's cool, that's
Yeah.
awesome, and I will say, there's always room to grow and learn, but you mentioned that you were an anomaly when you started just as an older adult and working with the younger improvisers, and I think there's been more work done to help bridge the gap between ages. I mean, are you seeing that? I know there's more work, but I know I hear, at least in the LA community, if you're playing an older adult, like, you don't have to be hunched using a cane kinda thing.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, there's so many stereotypes that show up in improv just as in any place where people are playing together and they may or may not have relationships with older adults in their lives, so they accept the media or the stereotypical whatever way of looking at older adults. And I'm thinking of our Camp Improv Utopia East. I'm trying to the name of when anybody can come up for 2 minutes at night. I can't
Oh,
remember the
Tiny
name of it.
Fest? Is it Tiny Fest?
I always think it was Tiny Fest. And there was a woman who came up, and I wish I knew her name, but she was probably in her 50s. And her whole thing for 2 minutes, it was very funny. It was about "Don't make me the mom," and it's so typical, especially for younger male improvisers, which there's so many of them. They
Mhm.
don't know what to do with you. You kind of look like your mom or their grandma, and so they make you that person. And when I was at Camp Improv initially in 2019, and I sat down with a woman, her name is Anna Crimmins from Boston. She
Oh,
goes by
yeah.
Crim, and she shows up at a lot of camps. And, she was in her mid to mid 70s, I'll say at the time. And I said, Crim, what do you do in Boston differently than Detroit? Because anybody over 40 is extremely rare where I come from. And she says, well, you just have to represent, Paula. You have to bring the improv to them. And at the time, my model, I was considering, well, what can I do with this? It was before I formed my business. And so I thought, well, okay, so I bring it to them as opposed to promote a program at the local community centers type idea. And that was a very wise suggestion on her part. She continues to be a friend, and now she's close to 80, I'm quite certain. And she teaches and performs and goes to camp and you name it. She's all very much involved. So she's a good mentor for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, I think I met her in classes at, Camp West in 2023. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So I wanted to ask you, so what made you start Vintage Improv Detroit, and then eventually discover this passion for working with seniors and then creating the Senior Improv Games training?
Well, from that dinner with Krim at camp, she told me about the Vintage Improv Fest, which is held on the East
Oh.
Coast in mid September, probably the week or 2 weeks after Camp Improv Utopia East. And I hadn't heard about it. And I kind of like the word vintage. And I thought, well, I'm going to borrow vintage improvisation and slap on Detroit at the end. And later in life, probably a year or so ago, Mickey Manting, who is behind the Vintage Improv Fest, she hosts it and sets it up and all. She reached out because she didn't want confusion between Vintage Improv Fest and Vintage Improvisation Detroit.
Oh.
There was no affiliation. It wasn't a problem, but she just wanted her followers to understand we weren't connected. So anyway, that's where the name of my company came from when I first started approaching senior living facilities and senior centers about a 1 hour experience that I could offer. And then obviously that led to the Senior Improv Games virtual training, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, great. And from your experience, and I know we'll get to it, we're going to talk a lot about senior improv in our second half, but how have you seen these skills of improv translate, one, in your own life, in your personal life, professional life, and then also as you're teaching these skills to the senior community? Like, how are you seeing these transformations?
Well, in terms of professional, I've done a variety of things over my career. I don't know how much you looked at my LinkedIn
I
profile, but I've
did,
done a lot of
yeah,
different things.
which
And,
is
they weren't
awesome.
always, well, it turns out it was awesome. At the time, it was just what I call blundering forward. I didn't always have that next clear cut plan. And I tried new things along the way. And I never planned to be an author, and I never planned to be an Amazon third party seller. And, I never planned on being, a senior improv games expert, if you will. But the blundering forward is sort of like yes anding whatever is in front of you, or that idea, like, "Ooh, what could I do with that idea?" And teamwork, that obviously, well, to me anyway, correlates in any work or work setting for sure, even personal hobbies, interests, having good people that meet up, the Metro Detroit Improv people, real diverse group of people that I play and perform with. And you get to anticipate how people are in scenes with you. You know what works with them. And you're willing to work with brand new people because that's what we do together. And I wouldn't consider myself an expert performer, but I'm well beyond what I was able to do when I was at Second City back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So just learning as thinking on your feet, teamwork, yes ending, it all goes together no matter where you are in life, whether you're in a social setting, a networking setting, a performing setting, it all works.
I love the term blundering forward because I'm in my mid-30s. I feel like that has been what my career is kinda like right now, and I work in the corporate wellness space. I saw you had that on your LinkedIn bio that you've done that. So we have something in common there, and yeah, it's a tough field, not to get into it too much, but, like, I feel like you're constantly having to explain to people why employee wellness is important and why it works. But then I remind
Yeah.
myself, like, well, you have to do the same in improv. Like, we're constantly having to tell people why improv works and, like, why it's beneficial. But sometimes when you're more passionate, it feels easier. Like, I'm happy to go to battle to fight for improv, but corporate wellness has been a little harder just because I've been doing it for 10 years now.
I completely understand. When I was at Buick Oldsmobile Cadillac with General Motors, I was the outside contract employee, and I was neither management nor union. So neither side knew what to do with me.
Yeah, that's a tough position.
Yeah. But I had to constantly convince people on each side of the coin that this was beneficial to all of the employees, no matter what color collar they wore. And it's all about relationships. And if they like you, they want to play with you, whether it's a fitness or nutrition or weight control or stress management, the relationship carries you a long way.
Which goes hand in hand with improv, right? And
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I think learning those skills of improv for me, I've been doing improv. We're in 2024 now, so it has been 4 years now in my improv journey. I can now say 4
Woohoo.
years. Yeah. And it's just been so beneficial for me, like building those relationships and connecting. I know some people have the mindset like, we have a meeting, let's keep it short and to the point, and I get that, but also you need to infuse a tiny bit of connection, like treat people like people. How were your holidays? How was your trip? How was your family? Like quick questions go a long way to me in building that connection and those relationships.
Yeah. And I learned a lot of skills in that realm, especially when Zoom meetings were the only option.
Mhm.
Um, and open space on Friday afternoons with the Applied Improv Network. Such creative people and such amazing community. I really owe a lot to that group of people across the country or across the world, I should say,
Mhm.
that I
Yeah.
know. It's been incredible. I truly consider that a big bonus from the pandemic. Huge bonus.
Yeah, what I've learned from them is abundance and sharing. Just the idea of sharing to make all of us better instead of hiding it and
Yeah.
keeping it like, "I do this thing, but I'm not
Yeah.
gonna I don't wanna share it, I don't want you to steal it." It's like we're all doing these games, but if we all facilitate them better, the improv community grows. That sharing in abundance rather than lack and competition and scarcity, that was a huge lesson learned for me in working with that community.
Yeah. It's a very generous community.
That's a good term too, generous. So I read in your bio that you've done a lot of speaking and also in your different jobs. I know you led like trainings and orientations and stuff for employees. So can you tell me a little bit about your public speaking journey? Have you always liked public speaking or did you have to learn to love it?
Well, in my earliest days, let me see. I used to work for the YMCA pretty much straight out of college. And I was a program director. So I had to speak maybe once a month at the staff meeting or the board of directors meeting or something like that. It was very nerve wracking for me. And then I ultimately ended up at the Chrysler Center Stay Well program. I worked for a hospital. It was this triangle relationship between the client, Chrysler, the vendor, Control Data Corporation was the owner of the wellness program, which is now
Mhm.
called Staywell Health Management Systems. And then I worked for Beaumont Hospital. That may be too much information, but
No, no,
my
I
boss,
get it. I get it. Yeah.
my boss, a guy named Michael O'Donnell, who was the guru of health promotion and wellness,
Oh yeah.
he, yeah, him, he wrote the handbook of health promotion and wellness. I can't remember that, but it was this huge book.
And
And he
he
says,
started the Art and Science of Health Promotion conference, I believe, if I'm thinking of the
yeah,
right
well,
person.
the American Journal of Health Promotion, that scholarly journal, was started by him and another guy. He suggested one day, Paula, you might want to check out Toastmasters. And I'm like, okay. And so I was in Toastmasters for several years and I got pretty decent at the 5 to 7 minute speeches. I think you're a distinguished Toastmaster, aren't you?
I am, yes.
I saw that jump out at me. I didn't get that far. Well, I was in the humorous speech contest and I liked the humorous speech contest route. But ultimately, I don't know about you, but I practiced those 5 to 7 minute speeches a billion times. And I had to have it perfectly memorized. And I just thought, I'm not even paying attention to what I'm saying. It's just like rote. I'm not paying attention. And I thought, I got to take a break from this. So I did. And I really haven't been with Toastmasters since that time. I went through a bunch of training through Peak Potentials. And I don't know if you've heard of it.
I
The
haven't,
Millionaire
no.
Mind. Yeah, T. Harvecker, the Millionaire Mind. There's a whole bunch of trainings that they do. The way they train, I don't know if you've ever seen any Tony Robbins stuff, but he's very interactive, engaging, asking questions, shouting back, blah, blah, blah. All that.
Mhm.
Everybody got to pay attention to see what's going to happen next. Well, Harvecker borrowed some of that and probably some of Dale Carnegie, and he just went around and he saw a whole bunch of people, how they conducted their large events, put together his own. I attended a lot. I went to both Train the Trainer programs and learned how to do all that interactive stuff because I love that as an audience member. And it engages me with not only with the speaker, but with the people around me. And it's very inspirational and engaging and energizing. And so I just love that. And so I started incorporating that into how I was speaking in front of audiences. And I haven't had a tremendous amount of diversity in who I've spoken to. When I was at BOC, I had to do orientations and health risk appraisal interpretations and,
Mm,
you know,
mhm.
what my program is about kind of presentations. And then at Chrysler, it was the stay well model of all those things. And so I was typically doing the same half-hour presentation to yet another group of employees at their lunch break or,
Yep.
whatever. I probably had PowerPoint slides, but I tried to inject a few jokes just because they're all falling asleep and they had to
Mhm.
make it interesting. So just it's just my style to be have a little bit of fun and make people laugh. I always want to make people laugh. So that's kind of my public speaking journey, if you will. And I'm considering storytelling, just that whole avenue. There's some local storytelling going on. I love the moth. And
Yes.
so I love great storytellers, and I would like to be one too. So that's one of my future.
Future goals?
So, yeah.
Yeah. I like storytelling too, and I struggle I think my weakness right now is I just get caught up in the details. There's a balance of details that you can share in a story that, like, keeps the audience's attention and then loses their attention, and I haven't found that right balance yet. I'm still working on that, but that is one of my goals too, is to become a better storyteller. And I think I get caught up in, like, the moth, like, having to tell these theme stories, but really, we tell stories all the time when we're talking in meetings or you're talking with a friend, and just becoming a better storyteller makes you a better communicator and salesperson. It's helpful all around.
Yeah. And I like to give context when I'm sharing something that happened or something that caught my attention. I like to tell a backstory if I have one, and not everybody's willing to hear that backstory. And some of my
Mhm.
friends, like, oh God, here goes Paula again. And I would like to present a story in a more succinct way. And I'm reading a book called Storyworthy by Matthew Dix that I heard about from a podcast for facilitators. And he's an expert story slam winner with the moth. And so I'm reading it very slowly, but I'll eventually get through it and apply what he knows.
I wrote that book down because I am interested in that as well. And just to go back to your Toastmasters comment, and not
Mhm.
bashing or anything, but I have felt that same feeling as well, that I was almost too polished in my speaking. And I guess if you look at the scale or graph of, like, polishedness, I have receded a little bit in how polished, quote unquote, "polished" my speeches are, and I would get that feedback a lot in my evaluations. People would say I was very polished, which just meant that I think, that I sounded really rehearsed, and, again, like you, I was word for word, I memorized everything, I had a whole, like, chunk method that I wrote out, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't write in paragraphs, I'd write in chunks so that way I could remember. And now I don't write out my speeches. If I do a 5 to 7 minute speech, I challenge myself. I am still in Toastmasters. I go 1 to 2 times a month, maybe to my local club, but I'll challenge myself to just write an outline and, try to be succinct. That's my problem, though, is
Yeah.
I sit
Yes.
down.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. I think I'm going to do a 15 to 20-minute solo podcast episode, and then I record for 45 minutes, and I'm like, okay, we could work on being more succinct here. So that is also on my list of goals.
Yeah. Just because you have 2 words for a point does not mean you're only going to say those 2 words. So, yes, length is a challenge with me as well. Yeah.
There's a running joke in my club that I am quite the talker, and I have also participated in Toastmasters contests, and I have disqualified myself because I went over time. This was a recent, like, last year. I did that in a Zoom
Yeah.
area contest, and I was just like, I thought I had it, but I really wanted to finish the story, and I did not have it. I was,
Yeah.
like, probably 5 seconds over time, but I felt better that I finished the story, at least.
I remember the evaluation role in Toastmasters used to stress me out big time because, like, oh my God, trying to
Mhm.
summarize or synthesize what I just heard and be able to deliver it back in a particular format. I thought, oh, please take me away now. And table topics. That was the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, table topics used to be my least favorite, and, of course, now it's my favorite. I'm like, "Oh, throw it at me. I'll answer all the questions,"
Yeah.
like, because people will shy away from it, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll take it. I'll take your question," but I know I
Yeah.
need to let other people have a turn too.
Well, I wish I had discovered improv back in that day because that I would break out into a cold sweat. It's just knowing I was next.
Been there, felt all of that, and that's why you practice, right? And then look at you now, like, you're leading applied improv workshops for seniors. That's incredible, and that is a huge undertaking. That's amazing. You're using your public speaking skills to the fullest.
Right. And as you alluded to in one of your communications is, I do prepare. I do have a way of approaching it and I play with it along the way. So I am still, I like things to be delivered in a particular way, but that gives me the flexibility of playing because it's so familiar and I know I'm going to finish on time and things like that. So that works
Yes,
for me.
preparation is definitely important, and I will say I do not just write well, I don't know, I guess I'll clarify that. I use, Session Lab to plan out my sessions, my
Yeah.
workshops that I'll do for applied improv workshops, and I think I got that maybe Erica Marks recommended it, she's in the AIN community,
Yeah.
and I really like the way they
Yeah.
structure it because you can have boxes of the games and the exercises, and then you can put the timing of it, so I've enjoyed using Session Lab, so I guess that's an outline, but within each box, you can put what you wanna say and stuff, so I do plan, I do prep, but then I allow myself room to go off script and not be so polished and formal, which I would say probably 5 or 6 years ago, I was still in that polished, really formal mind space.
Yeah. Well, I'm familiar with Session Lab. I only dabbled with it a little bit, but when I did the virtual trainings, I used Google Docs, and I
Yeah.
think one of the AIN people shared how they did it in Google Docs, and I just thought I'm familiar with that, and Session Lab was not quite a smooth operation for me, so I went with what I knew.
Well, we've chatted, got your background. Now I wanna talk all about senior improv. Let's take a quick break, and then we are gonna jump
Okay.
into all about senior improv games and your training. So we will be right back. All right, and we're back talking with Paula Dirkes all about senior improv. And Paula, I've got a lot of questions for you.
I've got a lot of answers.
Yeah, I bet you do, because you are the expert in senior improv. So, I mean, my first big question is just what are some of the benefits that you've seen from leading these workshops with seniors? What have you seen come up in your sessions?
Well, I meet with every new client for what I call the initial meeting. And because typically I've either met them in a networking meeting or I've been referred to them by somebody on their marketing department. And not everybody is familiar with whose line is it anyway, because
Mhm.
that is my first question, because it just tells me a lot right there. So when I meet with somebody that may not know what that improv is about, I don't typically use the words improv or improv games in any of my materials because it's just not completely universally familiar. But
Mhm.
what I tell them is my programs, some people think I'm a stand up comedian. And I'm like, no, I am a facilitator. I'm a facilitator, and your residents or members are the players. And they're like, really? And I said, yes. I said, I provide a 1 hour experience so that they are practicing socialization, engagement, creativity, imagination. There's a little bit of physicality about it, and they're going to experience some joy and laughter. And I said, that all happens in my experience, as opposed to bingo
Mm.
or mahjong, I think is another game that they're used to being performed at, as opposed to engaged in. There's certainly exceptions to the rule. There's some musical entertainers that come in and involve them in the singing or whatever. But I know nobody does the kinds of things that I do with that particular age group. And so I love that because
Yeah.
I am new and different. I am new and different. And they typically have not seen anything like it unless they've watched Who's Line or maybe seen some improv at a local theater or something like that. So they're normally very intrigued. Ooh, how can you do that? And I just say, we play 3 to 5 minute games that engage them, ask them to do things, take on a character, whatever it is. They're all different games, and I mix them up every single time I come. So that catches their attention because each senior living facility, especially the private pay facilities, they are trying to set themselves apart from the other ones with the perks and the benefits and the programming and the food, all the things
Mhm.
that a family or a resident is looking at as they consider that as their future home. And when they have unique programming, because they all have a program calendar and the family's going to be looking over all that, and when they see, this, I'm not there watching them, but they want unique ways of setting themselves apart. And this is one way of doing that.
Yeah, so when you're talking with the coordinators, planners, event planners, session planners, you're mentioning, like, help boost creativity, get people maybe moving, some kind of physical activity portion of it, and that physicality stood out to me because I imagine you work with people of all different abilities, both physical and mental abilities, so how do you accommodate for that?
Well, I learned early on that, well, I knew that safety was always a
Yeah.
critical concern. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to even mess with having them have to stand up in a circle like maybe we might do in a meetup group. So I set up a semicircle of chairs. And then people come in wheelchairs. They come in with their walkers, and I'll replace a chair with a wheelchair, or I'll make room for their walker to be parked behind their chair. So everything is done from a default seated position. And on occasion, it's rare that I would work with an independent living facility or residence, because independent living people have their own cars. They're going places, they're doing things. They don't want to stay in that facility
Okay.
much more than they wanted to. So the assisted living facility, I ultimately learned, was the sweet spot because they are pretty alert. Their mobility is dicey, and they don't necessarily have cars. They might be taking a van or a shuttle to the grocery store or whatever from the facility. But for the most part, they are hanging out in their living area. There's really nice living rooms and libraries and things like that at different high end facilities. So they're looking for activities. They're looking at the program calendar, and they're going to wander around and find something interesting. So seated is always my default. And even the people that are quite mobile, they appreciate having a place to sit when they're not currently playing the game. And it also forms a natural flow to the energy. If I were doing a circle game, they're already seated. The energy flows from one person to the next. I'm usually the filler person. I'm at the end of the circle where there's an opening, where I have me and my gear, but I'm part of the circle when the flow is going around. We're doing a name game or passing. I'll pass. This is a nice plush ball. And even this was chosen with care because a hard plastic one, people are afraid they'll get hit. People can't
Right,
see.
right.
Their dexterity is less than maybe yours and mine. And so it's a nice, cushy, nice thing to pass around. And maybe they introduce themselves and tell us their favorite place to travel, just things like that. So it makes it a great way of conducting a program. And it's rare that I ask people to approach me and form a backline unless they tend to be pretty mobile. Or I might choose 3 people in a row. They're the back line. They don't even have to
Okay.
move. We just play from that position.
I've seen pictures doing research. There were pictures of you having that circle and you're filling in a spot too. So you're not even in the middle. You're part of the circle, which is really that's great. Yeah. And my question with the ball, so you have a physical ball in a lot of improv classes that you've taken, I've taken. We will play with imaginary balls, but I imagine
Right.
it might be hard to see whose turn it is if there's an imaginary ball. So you prefer a physical
Yes.
ball.
Well, it depends. We would never toss the ball from one person to the next because
Okay.
their ability to reach it, catch it, hold
Yeah.
on to it, I don't want the danger of that to be part
Right.
of my experience. So this would be I pass it to this person, that person passes it to that
Mhm.
person. You know, it says boom, 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 boom around the circle. Yes, we play the snowball fight game. That's something that I think I created during the pandemic on
Oh,
for Zoom. And we have an imaginary snowball fight, and we throw imaginary snowballs at each other, but we have to call out the name of the person on Zoom. And we would do the same thing in an in-person setting, even though I put name tags on them. They can't necessarily see the name tags.
right.
And I'll say, just call out the color of the shirt of the person that you want to throw it to. And then that person, the receiver, can catch the ball, duck the ball, or get it smack in the face. So they have 3 ways of catching, ducking, or smack in the face the snowball. And they all love that. And we play Jingle Bells or something behind. And it's just a fun, silly game. It always is a hit wherever I play it, online or offline.
Oh, I love that. I think my first choice is always to get smacked in the face by it. That was
Well, it's surprising. You look at somebody and they're very nicely dressed, and you're like, oh, they're going to just be boring. They're the ones that get smacked in the
it's
face just because it's out of character for them, and they know it'll bring a laugh. So people always are looking for an audience. So
all right, and then with abilities like hearing, do you have like a set method like you repeat the instructions 3 or 4 times or you make sure everyone understands it first? How do you handle that? Explaining the rules of the games.
actually have a headset and a small speaker that's really quite effective at projecting my voice and also the music from my phone when I need it. And so that I almost I wear it almost all the time unless it's a really small group, which on occasion it is. And I check with them to see if they can hear me. And I do repeat things. And some people just don't hear very well, and I'll see it on their evaluation. I couldn't hear a thing. Well,
Mm.
they may or may not have told me that. And if I learn about it, I say, oh, please let me know the next time here. And there was one place I went to. I remember it was a hot summer day, and I had a really good group. And the life enrichment director decided to stick around because it was the first time I'd been there, and she was very quality oriented. And there was a woman just to my right, and she was very hard of hearing, and she would let me know, what I didn't hear what you said, I didn't hear. So I brought the speaker, my little portable speaker, and I put it right next to her ear for this game that I call chair dance party. And she got to participate because she could hear the music. And the life enrichment director was ecstatic that I would consider that. And she wrote me this really nice endorsement because of
Oh.
what I did. And this lady just, she probably never got to hear what was going on because nobody was ready to accommodate her. So I always remember that because it was very memorable and she was just so pleased. So it worked out well.
Are there times too, I imagine some of the are a lot of the games physical, or do you have some where they have to speak or add to a story or something? If they have to speak, they might not be mic'd up, so it might be hard to hear each of the
Right.
participants in order to add.
Well, picture the average program had maybe as little as 5 up to 30 people, but the sweet spot was about 15 to 20. That
Okay.
was somewhat normal. And that it's, takes up a good amount of space, but and quite frankly, the participants were not used to projecting their voice in a lot of cases. So
Mhm.
I often would repeat what they said so that the other people could hear it. And I had the mic set on. So I would make sure that the others could hear what other people said. Now, sometimes things are moving too quickly. So I can't keep up with everybody. But are you familiar with the game I'm a Tree?
Yes, but feel free to explain it
Okay.
a little bit too, how you run it.
Okay. Well, the I'm a Tree I'm familiar with is ultimately, 3 participants create a little what's the word? Uh, a
Like
little scene, we'll
vignettes?
say.
Yeah. Mm.
Yes, that's the word. And so first we'll determine who are the 3 players. Sometimes it's pre-designated, sometimes it's a backline, anybody just jumps forward, and we ask for the first person to step forward. And the example is I might go out and I'd say, I'm a tree. And I'd form my branches and I'd be a very strong tree. And then I would invite them, what goes with the tree? And somebody comes out, I'm a squirrel. And okay. And then so they come out and they, in a normal setting, they would physically join together in the little vignette in front of the audience. And then the third person comes out and said, I'm a worm on the ground. And so they formed the worm on the ground. And so that's our little scene. And then whoever came out first determines who stays in the scene and who leaves with them in the scene. And then that person repeats what they said. And then a brand new scene is created around that same item, but something brand new. So in a senior living facility where I have people sitting in chairs, when I ask for those same contributions, as soon as somebody contributes something, I will go over to them and I will repeat what they say and I'll remind them, now, what does that look like? And so they take on the formation of that worm or that apple or whatever. Okay. All right. What comes next? What else is going to go with this apple? And then I'll run over to that person and I'll say, what does that look like? And then, hold that form. Okay. What's last? And then I'll say, okay, number 1, number 2, number 3, and they'll repeat their formations. And then, okay, give them a round of applause. All right, who's going to stay? Who's going to go? And then we'll repeat it. So they like that game and they get to participate, but they may not physically move into the vignette, but everybody's paying
Right.
attention because I'm bringing the attention to the next player.
It sounds like
So
you're
I run
doing.
around.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
I'm I think somebody referred to it's like being an avatar. I did not see that movie, but somebody said something about that one time. And I'm like, I guess I'm an avatar. I am their partner in crime to make that part of the scene happen. I used to dress in business casual
Uh-huh.
and it became apparent this is not a business casual. I need to wear like workout clothes. And so I came up with my branded shirt and not quite sweatpants, but tennis shoes for sure, just because I was running. I mean, not every
Yeah.
game, but I want to be able to move quickly so that they feel like they're bonded together in whatever activity we're doing.
I love that adaptation of it, of, okay, we are creating a vignette, it's just people are in different spots, it doesn't have to be right in the middle, in front of everyone. That's a
Yeah.
great inclusive way to have them participate.
Yeah. Thank you.
How long are your workshops typically? How do you keep the energy
Well,
levels up?
Well, I don't call them workshops. I call
Okay.
them an improv game experience is sometimes the words I use, or it's a life enrichment program. And so I am teaching, but it's not really about learning skills and information. It's about the experience that I want to facilitate. So 1 hour is average. On a very rare occasion, I've done more, and in some cases, I've done a little bit less. It depends on
Mhm.
the level of care. An hour might be a little bit long for a memory care group. Whereas with assisted living, I've gotten down to a science and I've got a little intro, a little background and history about improv and improv games. And then I engage them with some questions and ask for a response. And then we jump into the warm ups or icebreakers. And then, depending on what I'm seeing in terms of their ability or their level of alertness, I have my plan of attack, so to speak, but I have plan B and sometimes plan C, depending on who shows up. Because quite frankly, I don't know who's going to show up. I know what the level of care is, I've been told, but I find that, oh, they're all assisted living as if they're completely alert and everything's fine. No, that's not always the case. There's always a mixture, greater abilities, lesser abilities, and I have to flex with that. And I think that level of unknown may concern some improvisers, perhaps unnecessarily. Yes, it took a little while for me to get comfortable, especially with a person that had memory care issues that isn't quite connected to what we're doing. I've figured out ways to manage that, and sometimes they're just happy to sit there and watch what's going on around them. And I interact with them as best I can. And they may or may not be able to participate in an energy game that goes around the circle. But I might hand it to them and then take it back, that ball, and then pass it on to the next person so that they can participate. So you never want to forget anybody.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned improvisers maybe being intimidated by this community. I will admit I certainly am. If I was ever approached to come teach a class at a senior facility, I would say, "Thank you, but let me tell you about my friend Paula, who it does this very well." And I would pass that along to you because it feels very there's a lot of different considerations to make that I don't think about when doing, like, corporate workshops and stuff. And I can tell that you've now had so much experience that you can kind of embrace whatever's thrown at you.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I did not seek out memory care groups for years. I really didn't take that on until maybe the beginning of 2023, I think. And then I had determined at that point, I always had a few memory care people as part of my assisted living groups. And what conclusion I came to is that rather than play games that require comfort with dialogue or character or storyline, I was going to play warm ups and icebreakers a whole lot more because they're
Mm,
still engaging, they're still creative and imaginative, and they're right now. It's all about the right now timing of what's going on. It's just what we're doing right now, simple responses, simple movement, follow what I'm doing, just a different mindset on what is successful for this group that has cognitive issues. So it's just adjusting. And I built up a list of games that work really well with memory care. And there's a larger list. I still play those games with assisted living, but they are more warm ups. And then we get into the meat of the activities with a little bit more responsibility, if you will, or skills used, or just stretching them a little bit more because they have the capacity to do so. They don't think they do,
mm.
but I always work my way up the ladder, so to speak, and test them. And I don't really truly have a lot of time within an hour if I do an intro and then I do icebreakers and then I do more major activities and then I have a cool down and then I have an evaluation. That all takes time. So I probably have 40 minutes worth of activities
Which
that,
goes fast.
yeah. And then, and they're not always, they want to chit chat a little bit, and I don't want to stop that. And I want to chit chat with them too. So it's just a great group of people to work with. It's just so fun. My dad used to have open houses at our home for business people and clients and all kinds of stuff. And so I was allowed to come to those parties and interact with the adults as young as a long time ago. And so it was a comfortable group of people for me to interact with. And so nowadays, it's like hanging out with my parents or grandparents at different buildings. I look at every new group and I think, how would I want my parents to be treated in this kind of
Yeah.
program? I would want to respect what they can do and
Mhm.
not make assumptions or use stereotypes about what they are able to do. I want to give them the opportunity to show me what they can do. And I want to pave the way so that they can be successful. I want them to smile. I want them to laugh and then experience joy and tap into the skills that they have, but they may not realize they have them. So that's what inspires me.
Love that. That means a lot because I mean, I am thinking about my grandma. She passed away in February 2020, right before the pandemic. She was
Mhm.
92, 93, and it was a pretty quick decline. Like, I would say over 2-year decline, but she had dementia. Started with a fall, and then it just like she was really independent even at 90, and then all of a sudden just the decline was quick. And I remember going to visit her in her home that she was in, and the alertness isn't there. I don't even know if she knew who I was at that point, who she was. She'd tell me stories, and I'd ask my mom, "Is that true?" She's, "I don't know. I don't think so." So it's hard. It's hard to see. I can't imagine going into a place, 1, 'cause it's a hard time for families to go into, but you're bringing joy. You're sparking joy in them, or you're trying to with these
Yeah.
workshops. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And I did have an opportunity to work. I came up with a new spin on the Senior Improv Games, or what I call Smart Games and Grins. That's the name of my program that I bring to different locations. But I was at a memory care facility and she said, "Well, I really would like something that we could have family members and the residents participate in." And so I said,
Oh.
"Okay, I can do that." And so I came up with the name Getting to Know You Games, I think is the name of it. And I've only been able to do it one time because for one reason or another, people aren't as interested in wrapping together family and residents. But primarily it was the family members that were playing the games with their family member that had cognitive challenges sitting next to them, but they were all together. And it, the cool thing about it is that the different families, I guess they already knew each other because they would pass each other in the hallways on the way to visit their family member that was
Yeah.
living there. So they were dealing with the same challenges. They had a family member in a similar situation. They were all watching the decline, but enjoying the fun things that happened every once in a while. And so I got to make it all about fun. And they got to play with mom or dad or grandpa or grandma sitting right there, maybe smiling or not, but they all got to play together. And they just came up and they're like, "That was so fun. That I just so much appreciate it. Oh my God. I was so great to see mom smile." And so that was really fun. I would like to do that more.
Oh my gosh, I have chills. That's so sweet. I can say from experience going to see my grandma, sometimes it was hard to even get her to move away from the TV room or something to come
Yeah.
sit outside with us. So, how do you deal with those of different cognitive abilities who, they're like, "I would rather be in front of the TV," or, "What is this?" They become maybe a distraction or a disruption. How do you deal with that? How do you handle that?
Well, to be honest, the people that come to my program, especially in a memory care facility, they are delivered. Their private hire caregiver or a life enrichment director or a staff member, they're just bringing everybody probably in wheelchairs or even in, I remember there was a quadriplegic resident. She was in like a bed that was on wheels and she showed up and she could talk and she could move her arm and she was very expressive. She just loved being in the program because she got to play with everybody else and everybody
Yeah.
else, they were used to her mobility and issues but they're used to helping her. And they would remind her, oh, this is when you say that, or repeat after her, or whatever. So they were facilitating the experience for their buddy, the resident with lots of challenges. So I don't go physically recruiting people, which was good and bad. Sometimes I would be there all by myself in the room and everybody chose to do other things. Or there was a cool thing. They were going on the shuttle bus to the Detroit Institute of Arts, and that was the cool thing that day, and mine wasn't as cool. So the people that do show up that maybe are more disruptive, for example, this was my saving grace one day at a facility. A woman came in and she was in a wheelchair and she had, I swear, 5 blankets on and she was clearly in a bad mood. And she did not, English was not her primary language. It became apparent because I'd go around, hello, what's your name? My name's Paula. And I finally got a name from somebody and I put her name tag on. And of course, I'm asked, would you like to put your name tag on or can I put your name tag on? I don't want to just reach out to them. So we were playing a game that was a name game and this was going around the circle and it came to her and she was just not playing anything. She didn't want to do anything. She was just in a grumpy mood. And so when she got this in her hand, she's like, ooh, and she's playing with it. And she's like, football, football.
Oh.
And I said, oh, and that, and soccer is football in Europe. And so I said, oh, you play football? You play soccer? Or do you know somebody soccer? Oh, football. And she just started smiling and chuckling. And I thought, I am not taking that ball away from her. So I left it with her and I got the other ball out and we continued the game with the other ball. And she just was a happy camper from that point on. And so that was a lesson for me that made her happy. And I wanted to keep her in that state of mind. So that was just one example of a woman that had memory care issues, but I figured out something that would help her be in a good state of mind. And then in other places, there's the comedian guy that thinks everything he says is funny. And you just gotta, great, Frank, thanks for sharing. We're going to play this now. And I'll try to incorporate Frank as quickly as possible. And on the flip side of things, if I'm telling too many stories, let me know.
No, I want all of them. This is so intriguing.
Well, there was another place. They were considered assisted living, but they were more of a memory care audience, high-end facility. And I got to work with several of those people on different occasions. And there was one gentleman, I know his name was Al, big guy in a wheelchair. And we were playing Imaginary Gift. Have you ever played that game?
Yes, but please explain, though, how you facilitated.
Okay. So Imaginary Gift is essentially I'm approaching people randomly and I say, Dana, I've got you a gift. And then I tell people in advance, now it could be a big gift, it could be a small gift, it could be a hot gift, it could be a prickly gift, it could be ticking. You don't know. I'll give you a couple clues, but you're going to open the gift because it's gift wrapped and you have to look inside and tell. And then I will ask probing questions about, and so that they explore what that is and how it feels or what it looks like. So I go up to Al and in my mind, I had a grocery bag and I set it down in front of him on the floor. And I said, Al, I got you a birthday gift. Look inside. And he had not said anything up until that point. And he looks down and he looks up. I said, tell me what's inside that bag down there. And he looks down, he looks up, he goes, there's nothing there.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, yes, he is taking me literally here. And I said, you're right. But if there was something in that bag, what might it be? And so we went back and forth, and eventually we got on track. And I probably had to accept that he just knew there wasn't something in that bag. And later, after the program ended, one of the staff members came up to me and he goes, you know what? That guy has never talked until today.
What?
And they go, no, he never talks. This is the first time he's ever talked.
Oh
And
my
I thought,
gosh.
all right, I'm doing something here.
Huh?
I will always remember that. And then there's another woman. I was doing a big program for 30 people at a senior center in a high end location around here. First program I'd done in person since the pandemic because
Mm.
I couldn't get into it. And this was a huge place. So I had this big room of people and we did a bunch of programs and they were very independent because it was a senior center. And there was a woman to my right, nice white haired lady. And I was passing out program evaluations. And I say, if you need help completing the evaluation, let me know. And she said, excuse me, I'm going to need help with my evaluation because I don't see very well. I said, okay, what's your name? Thelma. And so we completed the evaluation. And I said, and what worked for you today? Kind of was a fill in the blank. And she goes, this is the first time I have spent with people in 2 years, and I am very happy. And
Mm.
I'm like, well,
Oh,
thank
that's
you
so
for sharing,
sweet.
Thelma. Yeah. Sorry. It's just really a gratifying program and group to work with. It truly is.
Paula, you said you wanted to work on your storytelling. You just shared 3 to 4 stories that were just lovely. I could listen to you tell these stories all day. So, the storytelling
Thank
training
you.
is working.
Thank you. Well, I've been able to practice those stories a few times because they are so representative of certainly the high points in what I do. And not every program is like that. And sometimes
Mhm.
things just don't work. That's why I have to have lots of different plans and options. And I know what works. And I know the different levels of care and I can adjust and adapt as needed for sure.
Well, and I imagine it takes so much patience for someone like Al who's, "There's nothing there. There's nothing. I don't see anything." And you're like, "Please play the game with me. I'm trying to run something here. I'm trying to help you. You're not." But, you've done this so many times, it seems like you've developed I'd say thick skin in the sense of, like, if someone's not happy, you know it's not 'cause of you. They may be in pain or they may be in a bad mood, whatever. It's not you that they're angry at.
You definitely hit the nail on the head because you really have to think beyond what you're doing in the moment because maybe they just arrived at this facility and they are not
Mhm.
acclimating well. Maybe
Yeah.
they're feeling very poorly. Maybe their vision is going. Maybe their family isn't visiting. Who knows? There's so many possible things that could be happening in their life that you would never know and you may never know. And so you just have to figure we're just going to see what happens. I'm going to do the best I can and I'm going to try to make them smile. And there are some people that come in and I set up the physical circle and they'll come in and they'll park in the rows of chairs behind the circle. And I'd love for you to join me up here. This is where the action's going to be. No, I'll be fine. And so then we'll start doing activities and it'll be some kind of energy game or story game or something like that. And they might be shouting their response from the back of the circle. And I'm like, oh, if you want to play, you got to be part of the circle because that this is where the energy is. And so that will often get them to join the circle because I am trying to engage them in the activity. And a lot of people aren't sure that what's new, they're not sure they want to participate. And I've learned that just like in high school, for example, people are hesitant to try something new because they might be embarrassed in front of the other people. Same
Mhm.
goes in senior living facilities. There's a lot of cliques there. There's cool people. And people talk about people just like they do in other places. And they're hesitant to look like a fool
My
or not know
gosh.
how to do something. So I've learned that from the life enrichment directors. And they'll give me a heads up if a particular personality is going to be joining me. But I really have had very little problem with that. If you get people busy and doing something and laughing, they're connected. And I make a point in my intro that laughter is a universal language for anybody, anywhere. You don't have to speak English to laugh and enjoy somebody's
Hmm.
company. So,
And you said your kind of sweet spot is a assisted care facility, and now it's expanding into memory care. You're learning how to work and accommodate those abilities too. And then you said a senior center.
mhm.
So do you sometimes go into senior centers where those are independent people, right, who come in to do activities? Are you doing a lot of those as well?
Well, actually, initially, I thought senior centers was the route I should
Yeah.
pursue. But I learned that their program funding is typically abysmal. And if I approached the community center, they go, "Oh yeah, you can rent our room and you can do all your own marketing and try to attract people to this location." And
Oh, man.
and I thought, well, that's not going to work. Trying to do that everywhere all the time. So going to a facility like a senior living facility, actually, an older adult friend of mine, I had been running around to senior centers and not getting a lot of interest, and she said, "Go to that senior living facility down in the corner." Okay, I'd passed it a million times. So I went in and I said, "This is what I'm thinking. Would you consider offering it here?" And she said, "Yeah." Of course, I gave her a really good rate. And I went in there multiple times and it spanned from there. And I didn't know what to charge. I didn't know how much time. I had
Mhm.
some ideas on games, but I wasn't really clear on them. So I learned a lot. And that was 5 months before the pandemic. So I was just really getting rolling.
Wow.
That month that we went into lockdown, I had 5 gigs lined up. It was a banner week and I had to cancel them all. so,
Oh,
um,
man.
but senior centers, I ignored them for a long time. And then I was meeting people from senior centers at senior networking meetings that I would attend. And what I learned, and this is a secret for those that are listening to your podcast in the future,
Yes.
and I have not even really shared this in my training, is that other senior services professionals, the home care companies, the durable medical equipment, the insurance people, whatever service that seniors would be interested in or require, those people want to get in front of small, intimate groups of older adults to have their 5 minutes to pitch their service or product. So they are willing to sponsor me to go into a facility where they want to connect with the decision makers so that the decision maker will use their service for that senior living facility. So that was
Oh.
I knew about those kinds of sponsoring relationships, but I never thought, well, I don't understand how that would work for me. And there were companies that had big marketing budgets and they'd throw down $200 to be at a senior expo and have a table. And I'm like, oh, I don't have that kind of marketing dollars to have a table at a senior expo. But I realized this woman approached me a couple of years ago. And she says, I've been waiting to talk to you. I've held on to your business card all these years. I want to sponsor you at X facility. And I said, okay. And I thought, why? And then I realized that she's the only other person in the room in front of that audience that I'm going to play games with. So she's got her 3 to 5 minutes to, this is our sponsor, blah, blah, blah. She's going to tell you a little bit about her service. She's going to have a table and probably some nice little giveaways. And she'll be around after the program so you can talk to her. And she's going to play games with us today. everybody wins. So that model was how I financed most of my last year because I found a list of sponsors that wanted to work with me because I'd gotten a name in the senior services professionals as the improv games lady.
Uh-huh.
I'm the fun
Great
person.
name,
I'm the fun
great
person.
title.
Yeah. And so people like what I do. They get to play games and they get to be in front of the same audience that I'm already going to be playing games with. So that has its pros and cons. You have to manage the sponsors as well
Yeah,
as the client. And so it's a little bit more complicated. They have money, and not all senior living facilities have money. Not all senior centers have money, but they appreciate sponsors.
right. That's that's very interesting discovery that you've come across, from that, and it makes sense as long as the facility allows the sponsor to come, then they're essentially that company is paying you to do a presentation that they get to attend. Am I understanding that correctly?
Right. And so typically, two sponsors would split the cost of having me come in just so they could spread their marketing dollars out further, and
Okay.
they're not competing with each other. It's not going to be like two
Mhm.
home care agencies. So there are sponsor companies that they just run around and sponsor things together because they're now friends. They don't compete with each other and they split the cost of the event or the program. So there's a lot of people that work together all the time in that
Interesting.
realm.
Well, and I selfishly asked the senior center question because my mom would hate that I say her age, but I'll just say they're in their early 70s, and they've been doing
Mhm.
chair yoga. They go to a senior center. They love their chair yoga instructor. Oh my god, I know more about Mark, the chair yoga instructor. I'm like, he's gonna be at a holiday event. Like, they love Mark. I'm like, is he my new brother? Like, they talk about Mark all the time. They love it. They've gotten a really good sense of community out of it, and a part of me wishes that they had access to improv or these games, and I'm like, would they even go though? What would they think of it? So, anyway, I'm always looking out for in the New Orleans area, Metairie, Kenner area. If anyone's listening and knows any senior improv games, I would love to go with my parents one day and just try to introduce them to it and see what comes up. And I have a feeling I know what would come up, but I would just love for them to try it one day.
Yeah, and it truly is. If they just try a few things, I mean, first they have to get in the door, and that
Yeah.
I have no control over who comes or who doesn't come. But the people that come, usually their friend dragged them over, or let's try this new thing. Smart games. Some people are scared away by smart games. Ooh, how smart do I have to
Oh.
be? And then men don't want to be associated with fun or silliness.
Okay.
That's it's far more female anyway in the first place, but in
Mhm.
general in senior living facilities. But the men tend to shy away from things. I would say, at least I'm told by the life enrichment directors, it's really hard to get men involved in activities. But I remember this guy, he was in his 90s, Bobby, and he came up to me after the first program and he goes, "You've got quite an operation going here." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" And he said, "You're just having fun and people like fun. And what's not to like about that?" And I said, "Well, thank you very much." And I think he used to do comedy. And he is Mr. I want to try something new and get all these people busy doing it with me. And he said, they are the hardest group of people to get going. He says, I've tried a bunch of things and they don't have any interest. And so he was very excited to be able to participate in my program because it was fun and it was different.
I just think of my parents. I was home for Thanksgiving and they did a chair yoga class around Halloween, and the instructor filmed them doing a thriller dance. And it was them
Oh my
going
God.
like, just doing like this for 3 minutes, and they
Yeah.
loved it. They loved that it was on the internet, like, they were like, "Oh, look at us, that's fu," and then they accidentally shared it, and then my mom was like, "Did you share that on Facebook?" I was like, "I did not touch it. You shared it on Facebook." So, but they loved that, and I could see the joy, and I will say I think my dad is one of the only males in the chair yoga class. It's mostly females, but he does get, I think,
Yeah.
dragged to it because of my mom too.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no control over that. And I always fantasized about, ooh, wouldn't it be great if I had a core group of people at multiple facilities that I could get them more advanced in their skills over time because we have several hours together. That never happened.
Yeah.
Or maybe a few people would show up and they may or may not remember me by the time I get back there. And then I had this other fantasy that what if we had different facilities with their core group of improvisers come together for some kind of improv fest,
Oh
like a
my
senior
gosh.
improv fest in Detroit. No, that's not going to happen, or it hasn't happened yet. So perhaps I'm ahead of my time, but I figure if Boston can do it, why can't Detroit do it? So I guess I have to be happy with what I have been able to do. And I'm glad I've done it. I truly am.
I don't think you're that far ahead of your time. Don't give up on that thought because that could be really fun, and I think it's a matter of I maybe just offering the recurring sessions or hopefully getting your foot in the door that you can. I just think of the chair yoga, and I know that is more physical activity. Obviously, improv is a different sell, but once you get your groupies, and I say jokingly groupies, but, like, my
You're
parents
right.
are of Mark, the chair yoga instructor. Once
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get your
yeah.
groupies in each spot, then you've got your groups that you can teach and have come together at your senior improv festival. You can make it happen. If anyone can do it, Paula, it is
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. I always hoped it would be so great to have some way of connecting with that each individual that arrives, but it's HIPAA, it's privacy.
Yeah.
Um, and then you come back another time and like, where's so and so? And they're like, oh, she passed away. And I'm like,
Oh.
that happened on occasion, and it's what happens. Or they moved or whatever. And so
Mhm.
I consider these my favorite people, and then I didn't get to see them. So
Well, and I know this is, I'm struggling to ask this question because I imagine you might know what's coming, but you might get asked this too, but as you're going into these facilities and seeing older adults, and I use the word decline, but there's probably a better way to phrase it, but just aging process, do you find it depressing in any way? Or I don't know, or you're like, "I get to bring joy to these people," that's how you reframe it?
well, let me address the first part of your question. Everyone needs to understand there's 24 levels of care in the senior living world. From the
24.
very independent. Yeah, I provide a kind of an informational graph in my first training to help people understand the breadth and depth of care or independence that is available to older adults when they
Wow.
are living in a facility. And they all think of nursing home, people in wheelchairs, leaned over,
Yeah.
getting
Mhm.
ready to die tomorrow. And those facilities do exist. They're probably the lower end people that are on Medicaid, perhaps. They don't have all the bells and whistles and comforts and services within a facility. I've done programs in those kinds of facilities. I've done low end senior living facilities where they are so excited to have any program,
Mm.
not to mention a fun program. They all show up because it's the big event. And I love that group of people because I am truly a big event and excitement for them. Whereas the
Yeah.
high end facilities, they may have the program budget and they have all the nice comforts and ice cream and you name it, they've got it. Water walls and pianos but they
Water.
have so many choices. They have so many choices of things they can do. And there's so much square footage for them to get lost in. They may never
Mhm.
stumble across my program that is on their calendar, but they're not looking at the calendar. And so there's pros and cons. in all the different places you could work. But back to your question about don't I get depressed? Certainly, I don't necessarily see all those the lower functioning, lower mobility people in my programs, perhaps more so in the memory care audience groups. They are wheeled in and it is the group activity for that hour. And so they all are rolled in and they're put in the circle and maybe their caregiver hangs out or maybe they leave and come back. So they are not the perkiest group of audience
Mhm.
members, but I know ways of engaging them. I know music is inspirational. I know rhythmic activities are engaging. I know interacting with them one on one is getting their attention. I know a name on a name tag so I can call them by name is going to get their attention. So I ask them to be more engaged on a more personal basis. I might do an all play activity, but I try to engage individuals more so and speak to them personally as much as I can so that I am catching their attention in some way. And I'm not an expert. I've been part of some activity director Facebook pages because they're the people that would typically hire me or the life enrichment. Those people are creative all day long and
Yeah.
then some. And they are the people that have this much budget to hire outside people to come in and fill some slots for them while they run back and try to answer their phone calls and do their emails. Otherwise, they are on every minute, putting on a program, breaking it down, putting on another program, break down. They're running, 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 running. And I got to give them a lot of credit. And they burn out. There's a lot of turnover in those kinds of positions unless the company is really taking care of their people.
Yeah, just all the staff that work in those facilities. They're very hard roles and positions, so you're helping
Yeah.
them. You
But
come in
but
and at
the
least take it off their plate for an hour to bring some joy and,
yeah,
enthusiasm, excitement to the
but
patients.
the people that love working with older adults, they're just chit-chatting with them and give them a little hard time. That's I like to play with them. I like to do that in just my initial conversations with them. And I like to see who is in my room and just the initial conversation, just what's your name and where'd that come from? And just ways of engaging them initially and to see how alert they are. And if they can carry on a little conversation, that's helpful information to me as I enter the games part of the program.
Well, and flipping to the other side of your business, we talked all about how you lead trainings or workshops. You don't call them workshops, experiences. But then you're also helping people who want to get into this too. Kind of the same model of AIN, a little bit of if you can train people to be better senior facility session leaders, activity leaders, the more your business grows, the more their business grows, the better seniors get taken care of in these experiences. Everyone wins. So I saw on your website you have 2 trainings of your senior games. So you have the 8 secrets to elder-friendly improv games, adapt, guide, and get paid. And then also how to be a senior improv game superstar, get paid to play in the senior living market. So can you share some of the 8 secrets that I know this is a training you have on your website, but what are some of the 8 secrets to leading these elder-friendly improv games?
Well, I want to differentiate what we've been talking about for the most part up until now. The programs that I physically deliver in senior living facilities is something that any improviser can do, in my humble opinion. However, that improviser needs to be willing to facilitate a program with a group of older adult people who, of course, have different levels of care and different abilities. So,
Mhm.
knowing your audiences is important. But when I went to Camp Improv the first time, I thought they were looking for breakout session leaders on the afternoon where it was normally an afternoon off. But if you wanted to learn about a particular activity, they put it out. And I said, hey, I could tell them about my elder friendly improv games. So I did it. A handful of people showed up. They were interested in it. And so that led to my virtual trainings. So the virtual trainings took place in 2021 and 2022. And, one led to the next. And I feel like what I do, I don't have the only way of doing this, but I'm constantly trying to find other improvisers that work with older adults.
Yeah.
I've found a handful through the Applied Improv Network. They work with older adults in slightly different ways. Maybe they're all about performance. Maybe they're virtual. Nobody else does it quite like I do, but I'm always trying to share ideas and learn from others so that I can tweak what I do and they can learn from me as well. So I conducted a virtual training live on Zoom, and then I recorded it because I thought there's other improvisers down the way, hopefully that will want to learn this as well and bring it to their own community. And I had people from 5 continents on my training, the UK and
Wow.
Europe, I think Canada. Yeah, it was a real interesting population. And senior services and senior living facilities are not identical across the globe for sure.
Right.
In Europe, maybe it's being done at home. Maybe it's being done in a group home facility down on the corner. These big, massive facilities like we have in Detroit and beyond, they're not the norm everywhere. So what we do in Detroit may or may not work in a European country, for example. But there's a lot of countries where a lot of these skills would fit very well. So I wanted to offer that to the improv community or even the activity director community who are trying to learn new skills. And the 8 Secrets to Elder Friendly Improv was, here is the senior world that you need to know and the levels of care and just to give them survival skills, so to speak. And how do you navigate this whole big thing and then get work in it? And oh, by the way, here's a bunch of games that I already play and you can play too. If that's all you want, that's fine. But it's nice to know the bigger picture and how you can navigate successfully in it. So that was the focus of the 8 Secrets. And then from that experience, just giving people the layout of that industry and what to do in it, how to operate. Then I said, well, do you want to learn about the business that I've created to do these kinds of programs? And they were interested. So that's the 2-part training.
The Senior Improv Games Superstar. Yeah, get paid to
Yes,
play in
yes,
the senior living market.
that one. I haven't rattled off that title in a while. But yeah, that was to break down how do you connect with the senior services networking groups? What do you say when you go there? What's your elevator pitch, so to speak? How do you get gigs? Who do you talk to when you're pitching your idea at the facility? What might you say? What emails might you send? What's that initial meeting about with the life enrichment director? What keywords do you want to use so that you'll get their attention and deliver what they're looking for? And then ultimately, how do I deliver a program? What forms do I use? What documents have I created? What Google Sheets do I use? How do I track everything? How do I keep track of my games? I have a particular template that I use, and I have a spreadsheet that I'm always entering games and breaking it down, standard ways of keeping track of games and the components and the challenges and the props or whatever. And then I can print out a template in a form, and they all look the same format, but they all are each covering a different game. So I have a hard copy of everything I need to know about that game so that I have a binder that I bring with me so I can quickly review what I'm doing and then deliver the game. And I have all the props with me. I got my rolling backpack and I'm a mobile travel show here. So I have a particular way of doing things. That's the way that serves me well because it's something I'm always repeating in different places. I've got a binder for memory care games and assisted living games and independent living games. And I've got a huge library of all these games and I just pick and choose. And so I figure, why reinvent the wheel? Why reinvent the wheel for everybody out there? I want to have these people apply what I know and tweak what they want and serve the seniors in their community, because there is no reason, in my humble opinion, why improvisers can't do this and make some good money on the side. There's just no reason.
I am blown away by your organization, like, spreadsheet with the games and then, like, the debrief and props. I'm like, "That is so organized. That is amazing. I love your system." I don't have that kind of system. That's a great idea.
Well, I've learned from attending the open space gatherings on Zoom with AIN that everybody's got their pile of chicken scratch about, oh, that
Uh-huh,
great
yep.
game.
Mhm.
But pretty much nobody documents them. And I thought, that's the way I had that same pile. And I thought, I will go insane if I
Mhm.
have to figure out what this means 2 months from now. And so I thought, I have got to get organized. So, yes, I still have the pile that hasn't yet gotten to the spreadsheet or to the binder, but I've got a lot of stuff all ready to go. And there's the tried and true games. And then I always try to throw in some new ones that I learn along the way. And I'm always learning new ones, always learning new ones. So, yeah, I've got a lot of information to share. And I just really want this to take off. And I'm not going to be doing it forever. But the trainings were meant for the next generation, if you will. And I just really hope people, that people have definitely purchased the virtual trainings, but people don't know who I am. I just such an opportunity, and I so appreciate it, because I've tried ways of connecting with improvisers, but my concern is that not every improviser wants to be a facilitator
Right.
or a teacher, if you will. A lot of improvisers, they just want to perform. They want to be applauded. That's where they want to be. And
Mhm.
that's okay. But there are older improvisers that I've met. They are looking for other opportunities, maybe a side gig. Money is nice on occasion.
Right.
It's not, there are very few improvisers that are making any income for their talents. And the people that lead improv games, they have special talents, and they are a perfect fit for this if they're willing to take the time to develop the clientele and to get known in the senior services industry in their community. But it's very doable. It's very doable. I've learned a lot along the way, and I finally accepted that not every improviser wants to do this kind of work or work with older adults, or they're afraid that they're not able to do that. And I want to help them understand they are able to do that. And it's a very forgiving audience, and just an age group that is desperately looking for something to make their day
Yeah.
interesting and enjoyable.
I will say that it gives me hope seeing these kind of activities being offered to the senior community and aging adult population. I have a friend who has a pole fitness and aerial fitness studio, and she's
Mhm.
started
Mhm.
offering senior pole fitness to her community, and she gets 4 or 5. One is her mom who comes, but I'm like, that's awesome. And I think we all have
Yeah.
ideas of how we want to age and spend our older years. And for me, I hope to be as active as possible and active in the mind, active in the body, and just knowing that improv is not just for the young person. It is for all ages and all abilities. That is really inspiring and motivating to me to see it really span beyond just the stage too, and
Yeah.
to be brought into these rooms of people who unfortunately might have been forgotten about, or they're not visited as much, or their alertness
Mhm.
isn't there anymore. And what you're doing is so inspiring and so motivating. And I called you a legend earlier, and you were like, "Oh, I've never been called that." What you're doing is legendary. Like, you are creating a legacy, a model for people to follow for when they decide, "Okay, I've done corporate or I've done this avenue. I'm ready now to take on this." now you've put all the pieces, you've laid everything out for them. Certainly experience is necessary, but you're giving them the tools to take with them. That's incredible.
Well, I appreciate that. And if we just look at the improviser community, no matter what age they are, they will eventually be in some sort of senior living facility.
Mhm.
Would they rather have this as a standard part of their opportunities or
Yes.
activity choices? Or would they rather they play bingo? Now, bingo is a popular activity. I give
Nothing
it
wrong with
that.
bingo. Nothing wrong with bingo.
No, but there are other choices. And I think as improvisers age, they want to take it with them in whatever
Mm.
way they can do that. And as I said earlier, I think older improvisers are becoming a bit more common on stage. And I've definitely seen that since I got involved in the late 90s. So that's gratifying, but it truly is a 20 something, maybe 30 something activity, primarily male. And it's a competitive one upmanship kind
Yep.
of relationship that often goes on to stage. And I compare traditional improv to this kind of improv, and I refer to my kind of improv as gentle improv.
Oh,
I
I
want
love that
people to
term.
feel welcomed and able and ultimately successful and enjoyable. I don't want to scare anybody away because it was too hard or scary or they felt embarrassed in front of their other resident groups. So, it's a very different approach. Again, it's planning ahead, knowing your audience and adapting appropriately so that everybody can feel some success and joy.
I love that term, gentle improv. That's a brilliant term. Where do you see your gentle improv journey headed?
Well, I personally am transitioning towards the retirement world. I've
Mhm.
been working for a long time.
Congrats. That's
Um,
exciting.
yeah, I still have mixed feelings about it. I will be quite frank. But you know, I want to take some risks, if you will, in other
Mhm.
creative realms, like the storytelling. I still have voiceover in the back of my mind. I've always
Yeah.
loved audiobooks. I've taken a couple trainings, but that ultimately is called cold calling and all the stuff you got to do to build a business. And I got distracted by something else at some point. But it's something I always fantasize about doing. So learning new skills, connecting with new people. The improv community is pretty tight in the area, but quite frankly, they're not necessarily in my age group, but we hang out even so. But I'm going to try line dancing,
Yeah.
adding yoga. I'm adding yoga along with my HIIT trainings that I do 3 times a week, just doing a bunch of different activities. I would like to be a good example to my own age group. And I happen to be 66. So I think I'm an unusual person in my age group. And I want to continue being that person. So hopefully to inspire others.
Are you still planning to offer your senior improv games experiences after you retire? Can you still do that?
Well, the Smart Games and Grins is
Yeah.
a program that I charge for. And I will be less inclined to chase the next gig because it does take time and effort and follow up, which I do stress in the training. That's part of the deal. I've never figured out a way to streamline the influx of gigs. And it's just one of many things that the activity director or life enrichment director has to do. So I can't ask them to do more in a lot of cases, return my phone call. And, maybe at some point I'll just do it for free because it's fun for me. And when they get something free, sometimes it's attractive. Sometimes it's, oh, that can't possibly be valuable because it's free. So I would love to do it in some way. And being compensated is not a bad thing. And I enjoy performing with the meetup group people. So, but less time in front of a screen is
Yes.
something I want to move towards.
More
So my
travel in
eyes
your
are
future?
Oh, yeah, I definitely want to travel. I did a good amount of that last year, and I want to continue that. And friends of mine are, depending on who it is, they're maybe more available to travel as well. So I'm trying to line up some stuff in that realm.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's the ultimate goal of retirement, of most people. I'm generalizing, but okay, I'm done working. Now I want to travel. And then if you haven't taken care of yourself, then are you physically able to travel as much? And anyway, we're getting into the whole retirement conversation, but that is the ultimate goal that I have as I get older. I want to be able to travel, explore the world, get off the screens and just connect,
Yeah.
connect. So I hope you have that opportunity to connect in any capacity, whether it's paid or unpaid. I hope you have that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I definitely want to do that. And I've actually been spending a lot of time just exploring other things to do with my time and other people to do it. And I thought I was going to be going on a scavenger hunt at the Detroit Yacht Club later this
Whoa.
month, but there was a problem and I didn't get a ticket after all. So I'm kind of bummed about
Oh,
that. But supposedly they'll plan future ones. But I'm going to do line dancing in a week and a half. So I'm going to try that. I don't know if that can be done in track shoes, but I'll find out. So, yeah.
my mom will be embarrassed that I'm sharing this story, but I don't know if I don't think she listens, so she can get on me if she actually hears the story. But she went to the Y and tried out a line dancing class, and it was a very tight-knit group of people who've been doing it for a long time. They were advanced. They were intermediate to advanced
Right.
line dancing, and so she found herself not being able to keep up, and so she didn't go back. And she was like, "I'm not going back to that class." And I said, "Mom, it was your first time doing it. Like, you have to start somewhere. Give it another chance." And she said, "No, it was too hard." And so, Paul, I see you having a very yes and mindset and giving it a go again, but I hope you enjoy it and it challenges you in all the right ways that you say yes and to keep going back to line dancing too.
Well, I think that would be a good example of blundering forward. Um,
Yes.
and the line or blundering sideways, blundering back. Who knows?
Blundering in the wrong direction from the instructor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whenever I would involve myself in the hustle at a wedding reception or something, I felt like I
Yes.
was being trampled because I was going in the wrong direction at the wrong time. But yeah, I will start at the beginning and
Yeah.
figure it out.
Mhm. It sounds like you're saying yes and in your retirement. Any other ways? This is the usual question I end on, yes and mindset, growth mindset. How do you see yourself having a yes and mindset as you transition into this new adventure of life?
As I mentioned, I just want to be a good example for people that are
Yeah.
in their 60s, for example. There's so many people, I find out their age, I'm like, that's not me. I really do consider health to be critical, and I practice fitness on a regular basis and all kinds of other things, nutrition, etc. And it's a big part of my life. And so I consider that normal and I want to continue it. And I want to hang out with people that have similar values for sure.
Yeah. Love it. Paula, you are an absolute gem, legendary status there. I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for sharing so much. I learned so much in this, and I don't feel as intimidated now about senior improv. So thanks for taking the veil away and giving us, the inside scoop of what goes on. And I know people are listening, loving every moment. Where and how can our listeners find out more about you?
Well, in terms of the LinkedIn profile, Paula Dirkes is where to find me there. And seniorimprovgames.com is where the virtual training is located, along with a little welcome intro so you know what that's about. Vintage Improvisation Detroit was my original website. It's meant for local clientele that I might deliver the Smart Games and Grins program to,
Okay.
or perhaps corporate clients. So, a variety of places. And then my email, you can reach me at info@vintageimprovisationdetroit.com. That's one way.
Wonderful.
I'm all over the place. And I'm on YouTube too. I believe I have my channel is Vintage Improvisation Detroit and Senior
Oh,
Improv Games.
yes. I
Yeah.
love it. And you mentioned voiceover. I almost forgot. I've said it in a few episodes, but that's on my list to explore, and it is a doable goal. So maybe we can be accountability buddies and explore the voiceover world together.
I I've gone kind of peaks and valleys as far as how involved I want to be in it. But it's just I love audiobooks and I
Yeah.
just love really good voiceover artists. And so I'm pretty picky about that.
Ah,
And I would love to be that one of those voices that people really enjoy.
yeah. I love it. Paula, loved this episode. You were wonderful. I know this was a long one. It flew by. I'm looking at the time. I'm like, that was 2 hours. It didn't feel like it. And also, your storytelling abilities are on point. So keep practicing those storytelling skills because I could listen to you tell stories about your senior improv games experiences all day long.
Well, I really appreciate, Dana, your invitation to be here. I don't know your audience as well as you do, but if they're using improv in their speaking in some way, they're clearly great people. And maybe I'll catch you at a Camp Improv Utopia in the future.
Fingers crossed. If you're accepting hugs,
Yes.
we'll definitely give you a big hug. I believe our paths will cross, and I will see you somewhere in the improv world in the future, and I can't wait to meet you in person, Paula.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you so much for listening to today's episode. What an amazing episode it was. I know I'm biased, but Paula was so genuine and humble and just a really great portal and vessel for senior improv. I can tell how passionate she is and excited about senior improv and how much she wants it to grow and become a well-known thing in the senior community, like bingo and improv and all these connection-based games. It really is so important, and I struggled to ask the questions because aging is a topic that we struggle with in the US. I'll say I don't know about anywhere else or where you're listening from, but at least in the US in general, we don't like to talk about aging. We don't like to think that we're going to age. We don't like to even plan for aging. We often just think, oh, it'll all get taken care of. I saw it firsthand with my grandmas, the really sharp decline. And I'll just say, both of my grandmas lived to their 90s, so at least I have good genes, at least, but my mama was at my wedding, June 2016, and then she seemed okay, and then, like, almost a week or 2 later, she just started to decline, and I remember visiting her in the home in August 2016, and she passed away November 2016. I say all that to say is just life is fleeting and the declines can happen quickly, especially when you're at that point. And I know the important thing when people are considering homes and levels of care for their loved ones is how well they're taken care of. And depending on their levels of abilities and alertness and such, to be in homes that provide all of these fun activities that are stimulating and connecting and just bring joy. That is so important. And Paula is doing that in the Detroit community. I'm blown away and also impressed, one, by her level of organization that she mentioned with the spreadsheets and then the binders when she goes to her sessions. She has her binder with her and her plan. I was taking notes there. I'm also really impressed by her recognizing that one, that she wants to lead these workshops, what she calls experiences. She wants to lead these experiences, but then recognizing, hey, there's a whole world that is really hard to navigate. And she could be the one to show people a path so that way it's not as hard, and then they can get involved in this and start doing it a lot easier than she did. And I think that's really important too, kind of a train the trainer type of program. Like, here, take all the tools and the skills and the lessons that I've learned, use them in your business, make this a big thing in your community, make it great. Like, let me give you everything I know instead of hoarding it and hiding it away in a competitive way. Let me abundantly share it with you so that you have it and can make it your own. I am blown away by her generosity and also her term gentle improv, which is her term. We were talking about that after, and she was like, I came up with that. Do I need to trademark that day?" And I was like, "Nope, you do not need to trademark it. It is your term. I just love it. It's a great term, very spot on, necessary term that we need in the improv community right now." And one other thing that came to mind too when we were talking about senior games and just senior experiences, this is such a deep cut, but I remember watching This American Life had a few TV shows, like maybe a season of videos or TV shows. Yes, they have the podcast, This American Life, but they had maybe 10 episodes or so that they actually recorded and documented. And one of them was a senior facility did experiences where they helped the senior members write scripts, and then they got to act in the scripts. And then one lady's script was so good that, like, she was trying to get it into Sundance, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. I'll post the link if I can find it in the notes just because this is reminding me of it. And what came up in the episode, they were interviewing this lady who was so excited about her script, and then it took so much work finding actors in the community to do this. And I say in the senior community, in that facility, they had auditions for actors to play the parts, and then they had to film it, and it took days, and it took a lot of time and effort, but it was well worth it. The writer got so much joy and a sense of purpose and excitement out of it, and that is what it's all about, creativity-wise. Yes, the outcome is always nice and it's helpful. I don't remember if her video got accepted. I wanna say that it didn't get accepted, but at the end, it said, like, she was still working on other scripts to get it accepted or something, and I don't know, that's the kinda thing that keeps us going, especially when times are tough, life is hard. It's hard for me to talk about what others experience, but I can imagine if you're in pain or you're not able to do the things that you were once able to do, and maybe you're not seeing your family as much, that's really hard, and then to have this whole sense of purpose and being and, like, thing you're working on, that makes a huge difference. And so Paula coming in and leading this 1-hour experience, it makes a difference. And I love that. I love the difference that she's making and also how she's sharing it so that others can make a difference too. Something that came up at the end, Paula mentioned that she's transitioning to retirement mode where she'll be more doing the exercises. She'll be more in play mode where she gets to do whatever she wants, be healthy, be active, travel more. And then she'll still do some sessions and experiences whenever she can, but she might not be like actively pursuing it as much as she is right now. And it was cool to hear all her things that she wanted to try, line dancing and voiceover and travel and all this stuff. And it got me thinking about aging and retirement. And we always have this idea of who we're going to be when we're older, in our 60s, 70s, 80s, the type of person we're going to be. And again, generalizing for the US, it's usually, well, after I retire, I can do this. And after I am done with working and I don't have to be so stressed, then I can do this. And at least from my experience, sometimes that works for people. And sometimes they get to retirement and they've been so stressed that their health isn't in a good place. They aren't able to be as active as they thought they could be. They aren't able to travel as much because traveling is hard when you're not healthy, or even when you're healthy. Traveling is hard and it takes a lot out of you. And so if you don't have the energy for it, it can be really difficult. So what I'm trying to say is sometimes we wait until we have the time to try the things that we want to try. And my question for you today is just, can you try that thing now instead of waiting? Whatever you're putting a time on, oh, when I'm done with this, I'll try this. Or I just need to get through this project at work and then I'll work on this. Or I just need to get through this stage of life. When I'm done planning this wedding, or when I'm done, whatever it is. There's so many examples. I think we put things off so much and then it becomes, well, when I retire, then I can do this. And oftentimes we get there and we can't do it, or we don't have the means to do it, maybe the energy, whatever. Do it now. What is that thing that you can do now? Paula reminded me of voiceover. I've said that on a few episodes, and we are recording this in early 2024. And so I would like to make voiceover something that I work on too this year. I can work on it in different ways, through a class, through reading about it. There are many options and ways to focus on voiceover. So I think it would definitely help, and help improve the podcast too, and my podcasting abilities, and just overall presenting abilities as well. So, what's that thing? Feel free to share. What's that thing that you're like, oh, I'll do this when I retire, or after I'm done with this thing, then I can work on that. Yeah, after that, I can do this. What's that thing? And how can you do it now, or at least take a step to doing it now instead of putting it off until quote unquote later? Feel free to reach out to me and share. You can email me at dana@improvlyspeaking.com. That's DAYNA at improvlyspeaking.com. Always happy to hear from you and hear what you're working on. Let me know if anything came up or resonated with you. Please reach out to Paula if you're like, oh, senior improv, that's so cool. How can I do more of that? She's such a wonderful human. She's always happy to share, and I know she'd love to hear from you too. You can also reach out to me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Improvly Speaking. On LinkedIn, I'm at Dana Gowan. And you can find out more about my public speaking workshops and coaching services and applied improv trainings at improvlyspeaking.com. And I will add that I have recently started some Podmom merchandise in my Threadless store. So for any female identifying podcast hosts who are listening right now, one, I appreciate you listening, because oftentimes I'm just listening to myself talk and I don't often have time to listen to other podcasts. But any female identifying podcast hosts who consider their podcasts to be their little babies, you are a pod mom, and I've created some pod mom gear in the form of t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, notebooks, pillows, rugs, magnets. Honestly, anything you didn't really know you needed, you can now get with pod mom written on it. And I have a few different designs that I'm really proud of that Brandon Henschens, who is also a Camper Improv Utopia camper, he helped me with. So you can find that on improvlyspeaking.threadless. That's THREADLESS.com. I will also put that in the show notes now too. Thanks again for listening. Really glad you're here. Really appreciate you. I hope you're as inspired as I am by this episode. And I said this before in another episode, but I really liked it. I hope you will go out and break all the metaphorical legs in your performances, speeches, communications, anything you're trying to do. Break all the metaphorical legs. And while you're at it, say yes and flex your creative thinking. I'll talk to you next time.